daughter tried to get me to buy it.
Wow, that's different.
They actually spill really easy. Yes.
Oh, I wouldn't mind to. This one, just this, right? Because these are two different ones.
Yes, they're two different ones.
You seen that screen? That's different. Well, being in country go home.
So this is why we're waiting to sit by the Americans. The executive session.
We would do it.
I just log in with my user account and password. And I have it here, so that's just the way that's.
Are you taking notes today?
This is on where you can actually go edit. Actually edit things. But I didn't mess with Or no, take money out.
Go take money out, yeah.
No one would notice if it's
Transfers.
No one would notice if it was last month. If it's not right.
That's weird.
Somewhat close to my face. Yeah, it's on.
Waiting on me.
It is 1 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled commission meeting. Mr. Clerk, is there a quorum?
Yes.
Okay. Today it is my turn to do the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer. Please stand. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow. Heavenly Father, we pray for your guidance, wisdom, and support during today's meeting. Help us each contribute meaningful discussions that allow us to do your will. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that affect the citizens of Garden City. Be with our first responders to keep them safe and ensure that all make it home safely after their shift. And continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
approval of the minutes. Is anything that anybody saw? Okay, stand approved. Next up is public comment. This is a time for anybody to come up and give comment where there is nothing, or that is not on the agenda. I'll get it out here. Things that are not on the agenda. And if you do come up, please state your name and you'll have 5 minutes. Nope, okay.
Item 6A, Mayor and Commissioners, the governing body is asked to consider and approve requests from Whitney Buckman, board member of the Tumbleweed Festival, Inc., for the 32nd Annual Tumbleweed Festival. The specific items being requested of the commission are the use of and waiver of fees for the West Green at Lee Richardson Zoo. This request would include setup from August 21st through the 25th and tear down on August 28th and 29th, allowing volunteers to drive in the gates at no charge and closing the drive-in gates during the festival to maintain safe walking areas. Waiver of codes section 6-35 and 6-133 to allow possession, consumption, and sale of cereal, malt beverage, or alcoholic liquors in a public park. And item 4, waiver of the sign code ordinance to place no more than 4 banners on private properties on Mary Street and Kansas Avenue with approval of the landowners and the intersection of 3rd Street and Kansas Avenue.
I move to approve the request as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7A, Chief Courtney Pruitt will provide a report on the March 1, 2023 swatting incident at Garden City High School.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
What you have before you is a presentation that we're going to start off with, and hopefully it'll give you guys a glimpse into kind of what we faced that day. It'll also provide an opportunity, and hopefully is a little bit thought-provoking. Gives you guys a little bit of a level of understanding, and gives you guys an opportunity to ask any questions, which I can review about the swatting incident that we responded to. Put together a presentation. It's about 3 minutes. And it has a timeline. It'll get to some slides where we can talk about logistics and resources, but initially it's just going to have a little bit of body camera footage and some dispatch audio. So
Hit play.
hit play.
Attention EMS respond 633. Subscribe 19 has pending shooting 2720 Buffalo Way Boulevard Room 96. 2720 Buffalo Way Boulevard Room 96. This is the Garden City High School.
Pause and let it catch up. Try playing. All right. We'll see if that'll load up. We'll go to the next one. I can take it over, Matt.
Oh, okay.
So some of the agencies that were involved that day, the police department, the fire department, Finney County Sheriff, Highway Patrol, and the hospital at Centura Health. So, like I said, the video didn't play, but we'll see if we can't load it up at the end. We're going to go through a little bit of a timeline that covers kind of what we did when we responded. And then we'll get into the personnel and resources that were used that day. And then finally, and probably most importantly, the lessons learned. The timeline's just going to kind of play, and I'll talk through some of the highlights as it goes. We got the call at 9:13. There were 2 SROs that were on the scene. They immediately began searching. It was dispatched out as a shooting at the high school, which you've heard. Additional officers began to respond. We had 5 officers on scene at 9:15. At 9:18, 7 officers were on scene, and EMS had staged. They started to sweep or continued to sweep. At 9:19, we had our command elements there and additional officers arriving, and we moved the command post to the Nazarene Church. At 9:22, 15 officers inside. We had KHP troopers arrive at 9:24, making a total of 20 officers inside. The perimeter at 9:25 was established and reinforced by officers responding after that. 9:27, parents began arriving. St. Catherine's called to prepare for trauma, and we notified city management. 9:28, we requested the rescue task force, which is fire and EMS. 9:31, we put Horace Good in lockdown. 9:31 to 10:01, we had the command post established, and then we got the all clear at 10:01. 10:02 to 12:35, we worked through with school administration what we were going to do with reunification and getting kids either back to class or released for the day. The personnel involved, as you can see there, we had 37 Garden City Police Department personnel involved. That's both sworn and non-sworn. We were having a leadership meeting that morning, so we were very fortunate in that we had our entire leadership staff there. The fire department, they also were having a meeting that day, so they had some leadership that were available that day as well to help out. But they also did a callback, and I think they had a 98% recall on their callback to help out with either calls for service or the rescue task force portions of that. 5 deputies from the Finney County Sheriff's Office responded. We also had Finney County EMS respond up there with 1 ambulance and 4 personnel. Emergency management personnel responded, and then we had GIS that helped us with drone footage from Finney County. We also had 3 troopers, to include one of their captains. Captain Mosier helped with command a little bit, and he responded. And then 2 federal law enforcement officers, or agents in this case, showed up on scene and assisted with clearing. Some of the resources that we used that day, we had 7 command vehicles on scene with 1 command trailer, 8 fire apparatus. I promised I would say apparatus today. Just call them fire trucks. We also had 1 ambulance for medical evacuation. 2 drones were available, and then we had 2 armored vehicles that were available to respond if needed. Like I said before, this is probably the most important lesson learned, or the slide of the thing, and that's the lessons learned. Kind of breaking it down just a little bit. Communications, anytime you have a critical incident, communications is probably going to be on there. Either it's going to be really, really good or really, really bad. And for us, communications was definitely identified as something that all agency organizations that were there that day could use as a takeaway and improve on. From the PD and FD a little bit, we struggled a little bit with information flow. Getting the right information out to who needed it, especially parents and that type of thing. We worked hand in hand with USD 457 and their PIO, and our PIO. Worked hand in hand, and they were really either face-to-face or on the phone most of the time, trying to get a consistent and common message to push out. Both the USD 457 and the city, through our PIOs, like I said, were very, very deliberate about what they were doing, but it just wasn't fast enough to kind of feed the constant hunger for that information, especially for worried parents. So it's definitely something that we can take away as something that we can always work on to do better. And it kind of ties in a little bit further down with communications. Anytime you have a big incident where it's joint agencies responding, having a common radio channel for a crisis is important. We have that available with the exception of maybe the federal law enforcement being able to get onto our channels. But it's something that we constantly need to reevaluate and make sure that we're keeping with the times. So having that ability to talk to each other and speak to each other is vitally important. Some of the things that we're taking away or already working on is the mobile command post / backup 911 that we have in the works. And that's going to just add a layer of redundancy that we don't have already. But it also gives us the ability to push something up there with modern technology and maybe provide a little bit more of a common operating picture for leadership and something like that. One of the other programs that we have is a tactical dispatch program, which would put specially trained dispatchers that can deploy to the site with us and act as communications conduit for all the different information that's coming in, and we can push it out. And then, like I said before, keeping our radio communications equipment modernized and upgrade, making sure that we have upgraded encryption and other technology so we can make sure that we keep that information safe and protected. Mobile command posts will add to this, but also we have drones that are starting to add into it and being able to use the information that those are, the drones are providing in a timely manner and not have to download it from STD. Also up there is the Incident and Unified Command. Active shooter events or active killer events really have 3 stages. The first being that when we respond, we want to stop the killing as fast as we can. And the second phase would be stopping the dying. And then after that, it's the aftermath recovery. The first 2 phases of an active killer event we train on all the time. The one that we don't train on is the aftermath recovery. And it's something that we've identified and continue to try to improve on. These events will start as very law enforcement centric, but they'll quickly evolve into a unified command structure where all of our stakeholders and all of our partner agencies are going to be involved in that, and we're going to have leadership and decision makers from all of those different organizations. One of the, like I said, the gap is in that 3rd phase, and making sure that we keep the momentum going with this is important. We continue to provide run, high, fight or active shooter response training, both to agencies here in Garden City and surrounding communities. We work with the school district to do ALICE training, which is essentially the same. It's an options-based response for an active shooter event. And then working with our stakeholders to re-engage maybe some of those businesses that have kind of fallen off the radar because of COVID, and we haven't gotten back into to provide some updated training. And then up there you see reunification plan. Unfortunately, in training you can talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but until you get really a live fire event, and I hate to say it that way, but like a full dress rehearsal, you can't really exercise some of those, and the school district is in the case, that's the case for the school district and for us with the reunification, getting parents back in contact with their kids and making sure that they're okay. And so it was kind of an eye-opener for us, and I think the school as well. I'll speak a little bit for them, just because until you get 200 or 250 or 300 emotional parents responding to your crisis night, you can't train for that. So that was a fortunate / unfortunate part of this. Fortunate because we got to train and there were really no kids that were hurt, and unfortunate that they had to go through the emotional roller coasters that provided. It also drove home the point a little bit that we need to make crisis plans for other schools. So we continue to work on that. It's something that we've worked on, but it drove home the point that we need to maybe speed up the timetable just a little bit. And then the value of debriefings. At the police department, the fire department, we do a lot of debriefings, but I think the value of debriefings with our stakeholders and true debriefings, not just the, hey, we want to paint this as it was all perfect, because it wasn't all perfect. But the value of the debriefs that we had, and there were really 3 main debriefs. PD had an internal one, FD had an internal one, and then we had an overall one with the school district and some of the other responding agencies. And the lessons learned that came out of there, and just the conversation was really important. And then I've already kind of touched on the continued planning, training, and preparation. It's something that we all need to do, not just the police department, fire department. Anybody in a leadership position in any organization probably needs to pay attention to that, because it's not just at a school. With that, if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer.
I think one question that I have, and I've gone through it with my kids. I have 2 daughters at the high school, but what kind of advice could you give to the community as far as when something like this does happen? Me as a parent being home and getting called, by my kids I couldn't do anything about it. And so I put my trust in everybody who was there and not putting myself in harm's way, because we never know where shots are getting fired or who they're getting aimed at. But what kind of advice would you give to the community members who, I know as a parent, I was, like I said, you do want to rush to your kids' rescue and stuff, but what kind of assurance can you give back to citizens in that matter?
Well, a couple things. It's a great question. So I appreciate it, because any parents that respond up there, or anybody else that responds up there, even looky-loos that just want to take a picture on their cell phone, it's going to take away a first responder from possibly going inside and doing work. So the thing that I would say is, if you can control that emotional response and not respond, it would help us out immensely, because we wouldn't have to redirect resources to deal with parents at pedestrian gates, it would also not tie up the area with cars and traffic where we can't get in or can't get out with medical evacuation if we need to. So the assurances I can give you is within 20 minutes we had 25 officers inside searching and doing what they were trained to do, and hopefully that resonates with our community.
Yeah.
So, and it's something that every time that we have training on this, I push out. I don't want it to happen here. I don't want it to happen in Garden City.
All right.
Not that I want it to happen anywhere else. I really don't want it to happen in Garden City. So.
Well, we thank you for your response and everything that you and the department and all the others that did to mitigate that situation, or the possible.
It was all them.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Even though it wasn't it came in as a call, but it wasn't, we found out it wasn't a situation. You guys treated it as as a live situation, and it was good training for all the agencies, and something that, like you said, the debrief, we came back with better understanding of where the holes were and gaps were that we need to train on and figure out how to enhance those plans.
Yes, to your point is that night I kind of question our response just a little bit, second guess myself, I guess. But I think if it ever gets to the point where we don't respond like that, then maybe I don't need to be here. So.
I just want to say, Chief, also, I thank you for actually making this presentation, because it really lets people know not only the seriousness that you took, how everyone who responded took the call, but also this idea of that, we as a community really have to pull together. These are things that we don't want to ever happen, and then what we as a community can do. But I think it's really part of that transparency, helping us all understand how important the work not only you do, but what we can and what we should do, and then what we shouldn't do. So I think, going around and letting people know, because it'd be really easy to say, well, nothing happens, so let's not talk about this. But these are the hard things that if we as a community don't talk about, then when and if they ever do happen, which I'm not going to believe they will, then again, I think it could be very devastating. So I think, opening up the conversation and understanding that this is something that we as a community have to talk about, because I think there's a lot of emotions, that go on, especially if you have children in high school right now, and I can't imagine that. So.
Kids in school.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know if we could try one more time for the video. We'll see if it works.
Attention EMS respond 633. A 519 half pending shooting, 2720 Buffalo Way Boulevard, room 96. 2720 Buffalo Way Boulevard, room 96. City Garden City High School.
Any more questions?
No, no, but thank you for all of the men and women who are willing to, kind of just jump in and put their lives at risk on our behalf. And so we appreciate all you do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Bear with me just a second. Let's see. There we go. The remaining items under item 7 are staff reports, monthly staff reports. Do you have any questions over those? There's also a correspondence from Cox Communications pursuant to their franchise agreement with the city. Meetings of note, any items on there, please RSVP and take care of any arrangements through the city clerk's office. I think we're ready for the appropriation ordinance, Mayor. If approved, it would be appropriation ordinance number 2575-2023A.
I move to approve appropriation ordinance number 2575-2023A.
I'll second. Manny?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mayor, we discussed before the start of the meeting the request to move up in the agenda items 12E and F.
Yep.
Is it all right if we do that
Yes.
at this point in time? All right. I'm going to call everybody's attention to item 12E. The governing body is asked to consider and approve, or the governing body is asked to consider a late application for the neighborhood revitalization program on behalf of Hawkeye Developments for 2033 Labrador Boulevard. This is a similar request on item F for 2045 Labrador Boulevard. Danielle?
Awesome. I'll provide kind of the general background generally for both of these items and then go into the kind of the specifics related to each one. So according to our neighborhood revitalization program, the applicant must complete an application for that tax rebate within 180 days of issuance of the respective building permit tied to that particular project. I'm going to jump down a little bit in the memo. There's been a number of these that have come before you over the last 10 years that you all have considered related to instances where those applications have not been filed within that 180-day deadline. So this first item of 2033 Labrador is for a building permit related to space that was issued on December 1st of 2022. That project, which did meet the dollar threshold for the NRP program, was ultimately, that building permit was issued on December 1st. They received a certificate of occupancy at that property on October 22nd of 2021. So this is about 652 days after the deadline of when we received the request to have this be considered before you all today. We do have the developer with Hawkeye Development, Dr. Timothy Hannigan, who is here in the audience as well. If you have questions, I would be happy to answer the technical questions, and he can certainly speak to kind of the development as well. So ultimately, there are two alternatives before you this afternoon. One is to approve the request to submit that late application. The other is to not grant that approval. Staff is unable to make a recommendation one way or the other as it exceeds our guidelines for the NRP program. The fiscal note for you is if alternative one is chosen, 75% of the increase in that annual tax property will be rebated back to the property owner over the course of the next 7 years. If you all decide to go with alternative two, there is no fiscal note related to that. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Danielle, could you go over the item F2 and
Sure.
give kind of the lay of the land on both requests?
Yeah,
And then the commission
absolutely.
can take them up one at a time?
Yep. So item 2 is for the property located at 2045 Labrador. And for this, there was a building permit issued for the shell of the building issued on May 6th of 2021. They then went back and got a secondary building permit for the interior improvements of that facility on January 6th of 2022. Both of those combined was an improvement of $675,000, $375,000 for the shell of the building, and then $300,000 for those interior improvements that were made, which qualifies it under the NRP program. With those two different building permits, the application request was submitted 251 days after the deadline for that interior improvement permit, or 500 days for the shell improvement. So the fiscal impact alternatives, all of that are the same for both of these items.
Any questions? Did you, Dr. Hannigan, anything you wanted to come up and say?
have to say that I'm standing here and making this request is very much not consistent with the relationship I want to have with the city. I also want to delineate, in my mind, the difference between an excuse and a reason. And there is no excuse. The application process is clear. It's articulated well. We had successfully applied for this program on 2 previous buildings that we built. The employee responsible for submitting these applications successfully submitted for the first 2 buildings that we had. We had multiple meetings where the application submission was discussed in her presence. This isn't a after-the-fact realization that there's some money there that I can access. My decisions on both of these buildings were modeled upon receipt of the tax rebate. The rent rate that is set for the building I still own was based on that rebate. I secondarily sold the other building to Dr. Jewell, and I sold it with the understanding that that rebate would be transferred to him. Just whatever your decision is here, Hawkeye Development will reimburse him for the amount he expected to receive when he bought the building. This is how we operate. I had an employee that I turned this over to, and she is my employee. I stand here as the one responsible for the outcome of that employee. The responsibility was delineated clearly to her, and it was reminded to her. I think the time lapse that you see is accounted for by the fact that it was only after I replaced that employee, a full-time replacement, that I discovered this lapse. I know what I'm asking. I know the fact that if you grant this, you may have weight in future requests, and I accept whatever decision you make as the best decision for the city. And I appreciate your time.
Great, thank you. Any questions? We can take up E first. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we not approve the proposed request as submitted at the late application for the Neighborhood Revitalization Program.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next up then is item F.
I'll make the motion to not approve the proposal request to submit the late application for neighborhood revitalization.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Next item for consideration would be 10A. The governing body is asked to review and approve a resolution regarding the city's responding to a financial emergency plan. And if approved, it would be resolution number 3005-2023.
Good afternoon. The city has identified the following circumstances under which a financial emergency should be declared and has outlined those circumstances in the formally adopted financial management guidelines responding to a financial emergency. The commission is required to review these financial indicators each year. Staff provides the following information as of December 31st, 2022 in response to each circumstance described in the guidelines. Number one, Revenues are less than budgeted, such that the city's projected budgeted revenues are no longer anticipated to cover projected expenses. Revenues in the general bond and interest and airport funds exceeded budgeted amounts. The property and motor vehicle tax collections in these funds showed strong collections. Sales tax collections were also strong, with an increase of approximately 9.4% over 2021 collections. City enterprise fund revenues, except for the golf course, were all as projected. The cash carryover of the golf course, along with an increased transfer from the general fund and special parks and recreation fund, balanced out the difference. Number 2, reserves fall below the performance goal as identified in the fund balance guideline. If the fund has not yet met the performance goal, an emergency would be defined as a decrease in the reserve from the previous year if the spend down of the fund was not planned or budgeted. The general fund cash balance on December 31st, 2022 was $10,335,022. The fund balance policy for the general fund states to maintain a minimum of 15% of the general fund's annual operating budget. That amount for 2022 is $4,905,389. The carryover cash of 2023 of $10,335,022 exceeded the budget estimate by $2,345,062. The Community Trust Fund is to maintain a minimum fund balance of $2 million. On December 31st, 2022, the cash balance is $2,500,307. Number 3, the city is unable to reduce expenditures in the amount required to structurally balance the budget. The city has measures in place should the situation occur. It would involve the city manager working with department heads to resolve budgeted expenditures that can be reduced. However, it was not an issue in 2022. Number 4, an unforeseen extreme event requiring significant expenditures for repair or remediation that exceeds 20% of the fund budget. The city did not experience any unforeseen extreme events requiring significant expenditures for remediation exceeding 20% of any fund's budget. Number 5, the loss of a primary employer in the city resulting in a 2% or more increase in the city unemployment rate, a projected 10% drop in city valuation, or a 10% drop in population. The 10 largest employers in Finney County, as noted in the city ACFR, have shown no indication of a slowdown in the economy. The unemployment rate for December 2022 is 1.9% compared to 1.5% the previous year. The city does not anticipate a drop in valuation in 2023, which is reflected in the continuation of building permits being issued and preliminary data indicating property value increases over prior year valuations. For December 31st, 2022, the calculation for the city population by the Neighborhood and Development Services Department using U.S. Census Bureau data and residential unit data is 31,142. With this information, it is the staff's determination that a financial emergency does not exist. Accordingly, a resolution for your consideration has been prepared. The alternatives before you today are to approve the resolution as presented, or to not approve the resolution as presented and provide staff with any additional direction. The staff recommendation is to approve the resolution 3005-2023 as presented.
Jared, I have a question. You know, when we had the big weather event in February, did we have to declare a financial emergency at that time? I can't remember.
So that was back in 2021, and yes, we did.
Okay,
so
and
there
then
were a few months there where we had declared a financial emergency in 2021, and it ended up in June of 2021. We ended the financial emergency.
Okay.
And so when we reported last year on this, I indicated that had occurred, but then at that time in March when we presented this in 2022, that
No longer necessary. I move that we approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Item B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve amending Code of Ordinance Section 42-231 to increase administrative charges for false alarms pertaining to commercial buildings. And if approved, this would be ordinance number 2954-2023. I'll invite Fire Marshal Gene up to the podium, and he's already there. Boy, he's fast.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Over the past several months, the Garden City Fire Department has seen an increase in the number of false alarms being transmitted from fire alarm panels at various businesses across the city. And my office has been working diligently with these businesses to bring the fire alarm systems into compliance. Some of the alarm panels are older, require more attention to keep them functioning properly. I identified these specific businesses and have requested that the alarm panels be inspected by certified fire alarm inspectors and provide a report of the status of these alarms. As of December 31st, 2022, the following businesses have had fire alarm issues. The Comfort Inn had 13 false alarms in 2022. Town Place Suites by Marriott had 20 false alarms in 2022. And Bank of the West had 5 false alarms in 2022. During the McGrath study, personnel from McGrath looked at the fire department's call volume and noted that there was a significant increase in the number of false alarms over a 3-year time span. McGrath recommended a 10% reduction in the total number of false alarm fire alarm calls within a 12-month period. And they also recommended changing the city's administrative fees for false alarms by increasing the fines. Ordinance 42-231 currently has the following fee structure. For 1 to 5 false alarms per year, there is no fine. 6 to 15 false alarms per year, a $25 per occurrence. 6 to 25 false alarms per year, a $50 per occurrence. And 25 plus false alarms a year is $75 per occurrence. In their review, McGrath recommended the following fee structure. 1 to 2 false alarms per year, no fine. 3 to 4 false alarms per year, $100 per occurrence. 5 to 6 false alarms per year, $425 per occurrence. And 6 plus false alarms per year, $750 per occurrence. Staff met with Assistant City Manager Burke to discuss the recommended fee structure and make their own recommendations. Staff agreed that the fee structure recommended by the McGrath didn't take into consideration a way to bring forth an educational component that can be used to help these businesses bring their systems into compliance. While staff does see the need to have a fee structure in place for repeat offenders, staff felt the fee structure recommended by McGrath said it could be significantly reduced while still allowing the fees to be assessed. In order to present an updated fee structure that better suits our community, I reached out to 7 other departments to research their current false alarm fees. Staff recommended the following updated fee structure. 1 to 5 false alarms per year, there will be no fee. 6 to 10 false alarms per year, $100 per occurrence. 10 to 15 false alarms per year, $250 per occurrence. And 15 plus false alarms per year, $500 per occurrence. Staff feels that by educating the businesses on the responsibilities of maintaining a fire alarm system to protect their investment, as well as their employees, guests, and clients, the administrative fee change would be a last resort if compliance is not obtained. Staff would prepare a written letter to the businesses who would be in danger of receiving this administrative fee charge and allow them for a certain period of time to make the corrections, with the understanding that if the corrections were not made, an administrative fee would be assessed. Alternatives here, number 1, the governing body may approve amending the Code of Ordinance section 42-231 to reflect staff recommendations. 2, the governing body may not approve. Or 3, the governing body may provide staff with further guidance. Recommendation would be, or alternative number 1, for staff to have governing body approve the ordinance change. Any questions?
If we were to approve this, when would this go into effect?
I would venture immediately as soon as the signing of the ordinance.
So if you're
in the ordinance, it states after the publication, if you read in section 4, it says, the ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after this publication in the Garden City Telegram. So whenever we get that published in the Telegram, probably middle of April, I assume, depending on when it gets published.
I guess my next step would, so say somebody's already at 15, which hopefully they're not this far into the year. Would that immediately put them into their next one to be a $500? Like previously, the 16th would have been $50. Like, are we rolling that straight over? Like, what their count is right now would be their count if this is approved?
Actually, currently, right now, we have nobody in violation whatsoever.
Oh.
So they'd have 5. This year, because we've done educational components since this took place. Biggest problem we've seen with these systems is they're using older antiquated equipment, fault lines. A lot of these businesses are now upgrading to cellular, which is helping their systems out quite a bit. There are still some older systems here in town that have older devices, older smoke detectors, and we are educating them that every 10 years you have to change them out. So we're trying to work that educational component in with them to make sure that they're in compliance. But this is just a last resort in the event that we keep having these issues. And of course, you got to remember, we're also running fire apparatus to these calls.
Right.
Which adds a heightened sense of security too, because we don't want to be in an accident or anything like that. So.
Right. That's right.
And it's not written to be retroactive.
Okay.
So unless we did that, we wouldn't be able to go back. So it's written for after publication.
Yeah. I just didn't want to get a business that was kind of on a threshold and they were thinking it was going to be one number and then this gets passed and it's a big number, a dramatically different number. At the same point, like you're saying, these are real calls. I mean, we don't know if they're real or not until you actually show up. So it does take resources. So I move to approve ordinance 2954-2023.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve changes to the Public Safety Advisory Board as established under Resolution Number 2909-2022. If approved, this would be Resolution Number 3006-2023. Chief?
So some background on this request is in May of 2022, the fire department, the police department got together and discussed and then later requested the creation of a joint advisory board for both agencies. In the course of the months following that, we've met and discussed maybe adding another position to it, and this position would represent the medical interest group. It's something that we didn't have on our original police and citizens advisory board. And the reason for that would be to represent not only the medical professionals that we have in the community, but also be involved and collaborate with both of our departments. An item of note on this is some of the appointment recommendations that we have a little bit later on in new business are obviously an assumption that this gets approved. If not, then we'll ask for maybe an amendment to that. But the resolution establishing the changes just open up one. So alternatives are approval of the resolution or rejection of the resolution and provide further guidance. And we obviously recommend that.
I think it's a good addition.
We would like approval.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 3006-2023.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 12A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve 4 appointments to the Public Safety Advisory Board. Chief?
Welcome.
It's like the promenade up and down.
What you have before you is a request to consider and approve 4 appointments, not 3 now, 4 appointments to the Public Safety Advisory Board. We have 6 current vacant board positions, which include Asian American Retired Senior, Social Services, Citizen at Large, now Medical, and GCHS Student Interest Groups. We have the following individuals who have submitted applications and are recommended by the PSAB to fill the 4 of the 6 board vacancies. Amy Longa for the Social Services, Donna Gershner for Retired Senior, Amber Withington for Medical, and Elena Johnson for Citizens at Large. The terms of these individuals would expire in December of 2025 and are recommended for appointment based on their expertise in their respective fields and proactive involvement with the community. The PSAB has received additional 6 applications from individuals interested in serving on the board and will reach out to those applicants about their interest in meeting criteria for available vacancies. Alternatives are appoint the 4 recommendations with terms expiring in December of 2025, or do not appoint to the vacancies listed below and recommend that the PSAB continues to recruit board members. We have a stronger recommendation for approval on this.
I move to appoint their recommendations as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
We do have one of the applicants, Donna.
Yes.
Let's ask her a question, not to throw her under the bus. If not, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Item 12B, the governing body is asked to consider a franchise request from Wheatland Electric Cooperative, Inc. to be the electric service provider for the property annexed into the boundaries of the city of Garden City by ordinance number 2942-2022. Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor Commissioners. A little bit of background on this. On November 15th, 2022, the governing body approved ordinance number 2942-2022, annexing real property into the boundaries of the city of Garden City. This real property is within the certified territory of a retail electric supplier, specifically Wheatland Electric Cooperative Incorporated, And pursuant to KSA 66-1,176, the city has an obligation to negotiate for the issuance of a franchise agreement pursuant to KSA 12-2001 with Wheatland Electric, and since Wheatland Electric is the retail electric supplier holding a certificate within that annexed area. KSA 66-1176 requires the governing body to consider a minimum of 11 factors when making the selection of the electric service provider. These factors are, but are not limited to, the following. A, a public convenience and necessity. B, the rates of various suppliers. Excuse me. C, desires of the customer or customers to be served. D, economic impact on the suppliers. E, economic impact on the customers of the suppliers. F, the supplier's operational ability to serve the annexed area. G, avoiding the wasteful duplication of facilities. H, avoiding unnecessary encumbrance on the landscape. I, preventing the waste of materials and natural resources. J, proposals from any electric retail supplier holding a certificate in the annexed area. K, whether the selection is in the public interest as it relates to the factors considered by the city. A representative from Wheatland Electric, I believe Mr. Jim McVeigh, will speak on their behalf, and then I will come back and speak on the city's behalf. We'll both outline the 11 factors from both sides, and then when that's finished, the alternatives, really the alternatives, we can go through that right now. The alternatives would be that you asked each, you can ask either one of us for additional information. If there is any additional information requested, going back up there. Yeah, you can ask for additional information, or if there's no additional information requested by either the city staff or Wheatland Electric Cooperative, the governing body can further discuss the 11 factors, considering findings of facts and conclusions with regard to the selection of the retail electric supplier. That will be done at a subsequent meeting. So staff have no recommendations. The fiscal note, we'll just go through that real quick too. If Wheatland Electric has issued a franchise agreement, then they would pay the city a franchise fee, which is typically 5% of gross revenues in sales from the property in which the franchisee is granted. If the franchise request from Wheatland Electric is denied, and the city electric department or other provider is selected to serve the property, and 8.5% of gross revenues obtained from the property will be paid to Wheatland Electric for a period of 10 years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you, Mike. You did a lot better job than I would have done. Somebody, well, I appreciate that. Took a lot of the time I would have taken. Good afternoon.
Welcome.
I'm Jim McVeigh. I'm the Assistant General Manager and General Counsel at Wheatland Electric. I'm here, as Mike explained, to discuss a potential for a franchise agreement with the city over the area that was annexed from us, that is now within the city's territory. My discussion on the 11 factors starts on page 79, ends on page 95, for your convenience. In requesting franchises, Mike laid out, there are 11 factors that you're allowed to take into consideration, and any other factors that you deem relevant. What I'm going to really talk about, what really could happen under either one of those scenarios initially. One, after you consider the 11 factors and you make a decision, if you make a decision not to allow us to negotiate a franchise with Matt and Mike, basically Wheatland would get 8.5% of the gross, the customer load in that territory for the next 10 years. If you do grant that, what happens is we don't get the 8.5%. What we get is the right to serve the area that we had in our service territory. And you, without providing any type of investment, would get a franchise fee. Now, I will tell you that of our 30 cities that we serve in their territory, the average franchise is about 3.75 because they start from usually 2%, and after a certain number of years they go to 5%, or some of them jump straight to 5%. But that's something that you would decide in the negotiations if you wanted this to go forward. Regarding the 11 factors, to be honest with you, there's a lot of redundancy in those and a lot of language in those that are obviously written by lawyers. But what they're really talking about is what are the rates? What are the thoughts of the customers? what kind of service can we provide, and whether or not there are facilities that are being built that don't need to be built. They use language like, well, encumbrances on the landscape, things like that. But what they're really talking about is you have to add new facilities in there. When you look at those in reality, in the evidence I'm going to present to you, Wheatland actually has the better of all of those, if you want to know the truth about the situation we're in. The first one is, I want to point out also, is that there are no customers right now. I know there's going to be a development, but the developer, the landowner, is not a customer under the statute. There are no customers. But I think the evidence is pretty clear that customers are generally going to want cheaper rates. And so I think that element or factor, if you will, is probably going to be drive what I think your decision should be on both, if you will, of those factors, rates as well as desires of the customers or customers. And in that particular, I'm going to start with the rates themselves. And on page 5, Exhibit A, I was a little surprised by this myself, of our presentation. We did a comparison. We didn't add in the 8.5%. If we did, we didn't add in the franchise fee. What we did in Exhibit A is simply a comparison between the city's residential customer rates versus Wheatland's residential customer rates. And in that analysis, just to explain, Wheatland's rates are lower from this date going forward. In 2024, for example, the average house that Wheatland has anyway is about 1,000 kilowatts per month. At our rate, we took that average house and applied your rate, and we applied Wheatland's rate. In 2024, Wheatland's rate is $18 per month less expensive. In 2026, it grows to $24.68 less expensive. This again is a head-to-head competition without the issues of the franchise or the annexation coming into play. Now, I know that you were told that the power cost adjustment Wheatland has in their rate, but the city doesn't have a power cost adjustment in their rate. And I believe that's probably true. We do have a power cost adjustment, but remember, the power cost adjustment is the wholesale provider's increase or decrease in costs from month to month. And that power cost adjustment is in this competition, if you will, that I'm talking about. It's already added into this rate. But yes, we have a power cost adjustment, but even with the power cost adjustment, those are the differences in our rates, in our residential rates. Now, the commercial rates are basically the same, but I want to now go on to a scenario in which a franchise is not granted and Wheatland gets the 8.5%. Your ordinances basically put that 8.5% on the back of that individual customer who comes into this territory over the next 10 years. And when you add that, as you can imagine, the rates actually get more egregious, if you will, in the difference that customer is going to pay. In the year 2024, that customer is going to pay $29.21 more per month. Again, using the assumption of a 1,000 kilowatt hour house, which is our average. I'm assuming it's going to be close to your average. Keep in mind, if it's a bigger house, like probably in this development, it'll actually be more than this. So in 2026, it is $36.45 per month when you add in, if you don't grant a franchise, and the 8.5% goes on the backs of those customers that move into this territory. Again, the power cost adjustment is in there. By the way, as a side note, the power cost adjustment is basically driven by gas prices. Gas prices shot up in 22. They're back down to about $5 a BTU, and they're forecasted. Anybody can Google this. There's all kinds of people forecasting this. They're going to stay level for about 2 years, and beyond that, they're not willing to say. But basically, the power cost adjustment, interestingly, from 2019 to 2020 was actually lower, and in the power cost adjustment, and our rate was actually a credit for power cost adjustment. So I suspect that the rate will probably be the same for the power cost adjustment, at least for the near future. The Exhibit C is a scenario in which the franchise is granted, if you will. And however, I wanted to show you what 3.75% franchise fee to you would be, if you will, and those are those numbers. Even if it's 5%, if you will, it'd be a little different than what Mike just mentioned. 5% is the usual. For us, that's not our experience, but it definitely does get to 5%, but that's, again, a call for you. But 3.75%, even then, your Wheatland's rate would be lower by $24 in 2024 and $31 in 2026. The next issues that are summarized in the 11 factors generally are the facilities. The facilities in this particular case, it's an open area, it's agriculture or ground. If you look at Exhibit D, it's an overview of that. Wheatland's plans, and we put Wheatland's plans and your plans on this exhibit. Wheatland's plans are the Shelley sub, the brand new, is to the north. We have a sub just to the south of this area. Those facilities will allow us to serve redundantly into this area. In other words, if there's an outage of one, the other one can pick it up. It's a very important point for reliability, and something that you're always shooting for in this business is redundancy. From what I understand in reading the response from the city, you plan on serving it underground from the Morris substation. If there was an outage at the Morris substation, that would be the only path, from what I understand, that you're going to try to serve this from. So it's our belief, if that's correct, and they will correct me immediately here, I'm sure, if I'm wrong about that, but if that's correct, we have redundant service, and I think that's good. And now I'm going to tell you, I don't think that the service is a difference. I think you guys do an excellent job. I think we do an excellent job. There's no question that both of us are going to be able to serve a development very successfully, underground, overhead, in whatever way they would want to. The next photographs are just to show you the, if you will, the road going north from about the Morris substation, and both sides of that location, you can see on both sides of the road. On the right side, the east side, is the FERC jurisdictional transmission facilities in Sunflower. Electric Power Corporation on the left side are the overbuild from Wheatland's on the left side. As you can see, we're very poised, if you will, and have already made the investment, if you will, we were hoping to serve that area if it ever was developed, and so that's why we are already there. I'll summarize, and I tried to take as little time as I could, because I know how big your agenda is, always. We think our rates, we think that any customer's desires, considering the rates, the service that both can provide, and the fact that we don't have to add facilities under these 11 factors, and the city will have to go underground. I think makes it clear that this is a scenario in which Wheatland should be allowed a franchise in this 54 acres. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for your time.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to kind of walk through some of the exact same things that Mr. McVeigh went through. One is the public convenience and necessity. The city has provided safe, reliable, adequate, and efficient service to its residents for over 108 years within the city's limits. In the past 3 years, the city has invested over $16 million in upgrading its electrical distribution system and making it more robust with additional capacity to serve a growing community. A large portion of these upgrades included the purchase of facilities from the Wheatland Electric Co-op, including 2 large electrical substations that now provide the city with direct connection to the bulk transmission system. The city has been and is still publicly accountable to its citizens and is in the best position to gauge what is appropriate for the public convenience and necessity of its residents. The rates of various suppliers, this is number B of the factors. As Jim alluded to, the rates is considered part of that, and as directed by this KSA 661176, there will be an 8.5% of gross revenues of total retail sales for any new customer that's built in here to be paid directly to Wheatland Electric. That 8.5% will be added on to the people that's in that area, and then that money gets transferred to Wheatland at the end of the year. We currently do that now on 2 other properties that's in the same position. The statutory service areas, these rates shall set forth, these are the city's rates, these are the rates that set forth that apply the 8.5% to our existing rates so that we have it separated, so if you're in that particular area, you know exactly what those rates will be. I won't go through and read all of the different rate structures that we have. Jim is pretty much correct in the fact that at the present time, their rates are cheaper than the city of Garden City's. He did mention the PCA charge, and that previously that was their customers got a refund, but up the last 20 months they have not. It has been a charge, and that particular charge just on the city's accounts that we buy electricity from Wheatland for our water wells and the golf course, etc. That's exceeded $71,000 that we have done. And previous to that, I would just bring up that the city hadn't raised rates. We actually reduced electric rates between 2013 and 2021. And this is the first big increase that the city has had to do since that time. In the EC, that PCA charge also, the reason we eliminated that years ago was there is no guarantee on what that's going to be. Jim is correct, and it's probably driven mostly by natural gas charges, but we don't know what's going to happen. We didn't know there was going to be a war in Ukraine that would drive prices up. We didn't know a lot of different things, so to say that I think if you think that PCA charge is going to remain consistent, we've got a better magical ball than I got to look in there to determine that. The desires of the customer to be served, that's item C. The owners of the property, when they annexed this, specifically requested all services from the city of Garden City. There is no necessarily economic impact expected to be placed on the power supplier of the city. The number of customers being served by the city will eventually lower its overall cost per customer, creating greater efficiencies down the road. Excuse me just a second. Item E, economic impact on the customers of the suppliers. There is no economic impact expected to be placed on existing customers of the city. Those customers will enjoy the benefits from increased tax base through city annexation and increased enrollment in schools and lowering the per customer costs for the city's utilities cost of service. The supplier's operational ability to serve the annexed area, a little bit different on what Mr. McVeigh presented. We will serve this out of a Morris substation that's adjacent to this piece of property. This whatever is built in there, we don't know yet. We don't know if it's going to be residential. We don't know what's going to happen. So to say that there's going to be large homes or little homes, I can't speculate on that. But whatever is served in there, we will come underneath Jenny Barker Road, just as Wheatland Electric will, to come over to that property to serve it. But that will be tied back in with our substations on Highway 50. So we'll have a loop feed into that subdivision. So in the event that the Morris substation would go out of service for whatever reason, we would reserve that from another area. So that's really not an issue. I think both of us have the capability of properly serving that piece of property. The avoiding wasteful duplication of facilities. There's no duplication of facilities. Wheatland Electric has our overhead distribution side on the west side. We got the Morris substation. We're going to go under the road to serve in there. They're going to go under the road, or they're going to go overhead. I don't know yet what, but ours will be underground, so it's not an eyesore to that property. So it won't be hindering the landscape. is pretty much straightforward. On the city exhibit XXX, that's the one where I pointed out that the last 20 months cost the city $71,000. And then in Wheatland Electric's Exhibit B, Wheatland states that their rate is $31.05 less expensive than the city, which in general, that's true. What they fail to say, though, of that money, Wheatland will get 8.5% of that sent directly to them. So it's a charge that's passed to the customer that goes straight to Wheatland Electric for that service. And I'll stand for any questions you may have.
So when does the 8.5%, so like say the next 10 years, I'm sure that the developer wants to do something, but say over the next 10 years, nothing gets developed. So if we stay with the city, does the city pay them nothing on, you wouldn't have to pay them anything on that, and then it would expire? Or does it start the minute that a house builds and it goes for 10 years on each of the property?
If the governing body was to say you deny Wheatland's request and the city's going to serve that property, we would purchase the facilities that's there now, which is part of the state statute. That's that $2,700 or whatever that number was. And then when that happens, then we will file with the KCC to let them know that this service territory is now transferred over to the city. And when that happens, then the 10 years go into effect. And if nothing is built in there, then Wheatland will not be paid anything for that 10-year period. After 10 years, if something gets built, Wheatland would receive that 8.5% would not be paid to them. I believe I got that correct. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep. So, and the other question, so, I mean, I know that we purchased the Moore substation, and I can't remember the name of the other substation. I had it and I lost it, but you know, we purchased those hoping that we as a electric provider could do some of these kind of things, provide electricity. And am I correct in understanding that's part of the reason why we purchased the Moore substation?
Yes, it is. Part of the reason, well, to back up a little bit, the city had every intention of getting connected to the bulk
direct connection.
Directed by the governing body many years ago. In order to complete that, it was either build our own facilities. Wheatland came in and offered to sell those facilities to the city. You guys granted it, we purchased those. We put in larger transformers with the intent to be able to maximize our ability to serve additional customers regardless of city.
Yeah, so I'm just curious about, Mr. McVeigh, the building of the other substation, was that to do something differently, or, because it looks like Moore substation's really close to where you guys are also building the new one. I was just curious about why the new one. And
Yes, and if I understand your question, in response to the sale of the Moore substation, we were going to need to be able to serve outside the city limits at that time going east, not knowing the future. And so that substation was built with the size of transformer it is, with the excess capacity we have to build out in this area.
yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it.
Any other information that you want to request? So there's no decision to be made today because, correct, Mike? Because that will come to us at a subsequent meeting to give us sort of time to consider the findings of fact. So.
Yeah, if you have additional questions for either of us, now would be the time to ask us to present that to you at another meeting, or you can't do it today, and then you take all that under advisement.
Or if you find you have additional questions or you need additional information, as Jennifer will tell you, that you just send that data request out and we'll get that information.
Okay.
Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the distribution of the first portion of the $50,000 of AFAC funds as recommended by staff.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. Back again for the other path of the alcohol funding. So just as a kind of brief reminder, based in state statute, alcohol funds are distributed across 3 different funds for the city. So a third of it goes to the general fund, a third of it is credited to the Special Parks and Recreation Fund, and then a third goes to the Special Alcohol and Drug Programming Fund. So the focus of those funds is to really focus on treatment and prevention And the past awards have largely been made to agencies that have provided an expanded definition of prevention based on accepted categories of prevention strategy. And this kind of additional flexibility really aims to keep these dollars local and in our community. So like I mentioned, there are kind of two paths for these fundings that we've gone down the last couple of years. So 50% of the funding are for organizations that meet the requirement of the statutes that are reviewed by staff. So those are applications that can go up to $6,000 per application. That's what's being recommended and presented to you all today. The second portion came to you all at your last governing body meeting. Those are for applications that exceed that $6,000 amount, and those are reviewed by Live Well County. So with that, we received and staff reviewed a total of 8 applications that are outlined here before you, totaling $47,970. And all of those applications are attached in your packet for review. So the city and the county have budgeted $50,000 for that distribution for that first kind of application of funding. And after reviewing those proposals, we respectfully submit the following recommendations, and that is to fully fund all of the applications that we received for that funding, recognizing that it aligns with the intent of state statute. With one kind of minor change that I wanted to make sure you all were aware of related to the application for the Garden City Ministerial Alliance that has been updated to provide funding for guidebooks that are for Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Instead of, they had a devotional and recovery Bible in there, they have decided to use those dollars for those other guidebooks. The dollars were about the same between those two, so I wanted to kind of call your attention to that. That is the one change that we discussed with any of the applicants. So 3 alternatives before you this afternoon. One is to approve staff's recommendation to fully fund all 8 agencies for the first round of AFAC funding. You also may deny the approval of those requests or provide staff with alternative direction. So staff recommends the governing body approve staff's recommendation to fully fund all 8 applicants for the first round of AFAC funding, and that will come out of the AFAC fund in that respective general account code. Be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
So I just had a question about the remaining balance of the 50,000. So are those not able to be granted, or do we still have time for people to write applications? I know it's not much, but
Yeah, so we do not have a plan to open that application process back up. I will say there is a fund balance that we have in that fund. So I think the idea is really going forward to continue to push this application, hopefully a little further out, and get more applications that we can consider every year, because there is a little bit that'll stay in that fund and kind of roll over to next year.
Any other questions?
I move to approve the staff's recommendation to fully fund all 8 applicants for the first round of AFAC funding.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12D, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the strategic goals and objectives for 2023 through 2024, ratifying the work done at its most recent goal-setting retreat. The City Commission met on March 2nd for its annual goal-setting retreat, and the product of that brainstorming and prioritization exercise from the retreat is attached. And the Commission is asked to ratify the document, which will be used to help guide the staff in prioritizing work, preparing future workshop and agenda items, and establishing the 2024 annual budget. The governing body may approve the attached document as the City Commission's strategic goals and objectives for 2023 through 2024. You may amend the attached document and then approve, or you may choose to not approve and give staff additional direction. Our recommendation is that the governing body approve the attached document as the City Commission's strategic goals and objectives for 2023 through 2024.
I'll say that you did a really good job of summarizing, and it's really organized compared to to all the things that were recorded, so I just appreciate that. So with that, I was shocked when I read them. So with that, I move to approve the City Commission strategic goals and objectives for 2023 to 2024.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
I think we're just one for the 4,000 housing units. I know we established a baseline from 2022. Is there like an actual number of units that we can put in there? Or that can come in later for the remarks? I guess I would just like to suggest that option in there.
Was it a question or a recommendation?
Recommendation. I started that as a question, but I think recommended to put a number of units.
4,000 by 2023 based on the
What's been built
last year's
today.
pay.
Right.
Yeah, so built and developed and all that, I would recommend that be included in the comments, and kind of a log in our report back too, is
Okay.
kind of gauging where we are. And your monthly reports from Neighborhood and Development Services keep a pretty good track.
Right.
You know, when was the start date is probably a little wiggly. And what constitutes a unit that we have a development that projects 500 units or like certificates of occupancy issued. But we can track against all of those things for you and should track against all those things for you. And we'll do that in our comments, but and then also our housing update, which you'll be seeing in about a month, and our and the Neighborhood Development Services monthly report, if I didn't say that already.
Yeah, okay.
Any other
Thanks.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We're going to ask for 2 executive sessions. Neither of those, is it anticipated that we would have any action taken afterwards. So if the commission would like to go ahead and go to the consent agenda items, which is only one, G1, we can take care of that, and then the commission reports.
I move to approve consent agenda item G1.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Dick?
First, like to point out or say thanks. I'm kind of actually doing in reverse order, so this might be a little bit different. But since Pastor Heck is here, just to point out and give thanks to the Church of Nazarene and what they've been doing. First, reminded for the staging ground for the police department response to the call at the high school, but also just with the community events that they've been hosting. I know that they've been stepping up when the community has been needing them, so I want to point out and thank them for what they've been doing for the community as a whole and the value that they have been bringing. So thank you for that. Also like to say thanks to Chief and all the law enforcement agencies and medical staff and everybody that was involved in that response to the call at the high school. You can definitely see the profession and the training that went into it, how everything was executed properly, and take away those points to get improvement, which is always, like Chief said, a really good thing about these kind of like live drill kind of things where you're not really going to see those issues until you're actually doing it. And this is, I'm glad that we took this opportunity to learn from it. So even if we're not the ones that benefit from it, we will be able to tell other organizations and other communities what we learned from these things that they need to prepare for, how you do the reunifications and those sorts of things. So hopefully, like Commissioner Hunter said, we'll never come to that, but we know that this does help us become better in responding to all different. It doesn't have to necessarily be this. It's how we respond to any sort of emergency. So it was a good report, and I'm glad the Chief took time to present on that. And then finally, just good pre-meeting with Molly Fox with Kansas Health Science Center, talking about the internships and residencies with the DO school coming out here. That will be a big help to our medical community locally, but also throughout rural Kansas. It's going to be a really huge step forward to making sure that we get the medical care that we need for all those communities that are so underserved. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Unruh.
So just I see a lot of people already putting stuff out for the spring cleanup, which is exciting. And I know it seems like it's really far away, and then all of a sudden it's that day. So just to remind you, spring cleanup, and it is a really neat opportunity to get everything spruced up. And it's actually feeling like spring. Yesterday was a day in western Kansas with no wind and sun, so what an incredible day. I also want to say thank you to all of the AVAC applicants. You know, as you read through these applications, there's some really, well, number one, really incredibly creative people and are doing some really hard work with some areas that, you know, in our community that people really struggle with. So I really appreciate all the applications and that we're able to fully fund those. Danielle, that was awesome. That was pretty incredible. So that was neat. I also want to say thank you to Molly Fox. That was a really neat presentation. I don't know if you community knows, but the pre-meetings are open to all the public, and there's some really good information. But she presented, I couldn't remember the name of so I'm glad that you said it, Commissioner Dick, about the Kansas Health Science Center, but really about building a workforce of doctors, you know, for rural Kansas. So that was really exciting. I also just want to say thank you to Dr. Hannigan. You know, I really appreciated his comment. You know, I'm not making an excuse. I'm just giving a reason. You know, I really appreciate not only his continued development in the community, and I know that these programs are in place, and I really appreciate it. I was going to ask if the application process was easy to understand, and he said it was. And so I really appreciate him coming, and that's part of what we as a city commission, you have the opportunity to do. The last thing I want to say is, I'll tell you, that was a very sobering for me presentation from Chief Pruitt. That is, it was a really hard to watch, and then even watching the footage, it's just something that, you know, in our community, I want to say that, you know, I really appreciate their planning for success. And, you know, this idea of lessons learned, you know, and admitting that, you know, it's not really getting it perfect, but it's really, we're going to do better and better as we go along. And I also really appreciate how the community really pulls together. I think he gave some really great recommendations to each and every one of us about how we can help. I thought to myself, you know, I didn't even think about it. Someone called me, and I mean, I thought, I could have at least prayed, you know what I'm saying? I didn't even do that. And so I thought about, instead I was waiting for news. And so, yeah, so it kind of gave me an idea of, you know, there are things that we can do as a community, and a lot of it stay out of the way and let the professionals handle it. But I really appreciate all of the way that they pulled together to really make what's fortunately something that didn't happen really a great learning experience. So that's it.
Commissioner Cessna.
Yeah, good pre-meeting, a lot of good information there. First class for the Citizens Academy starts this week, so always a joy to see that. Gives everybody that's in that class a great example of how our communities run from behind the scenes. Great to see that the construction is starting to get underway on the new traffic signal at Jenny Barker and K156. Just make sure that you're watching out for the workers as they're working in that intersection area. Don't want to hurt anybody while they're getting that up. The signal is expected to be fully operational in May, and this is another project that is getting completed as promised from the 2017 sales tax ballot issue. Also coming up next Monday, the Kansas Office of Broadband Development will bring its Kansas Broadband Roadshow to Garden City. It'll be from 6:30 to 8 at the Garden City Community College. The broadband staff are currently traveling across the state to learn directly from Kansans about internet access and its availability in their communities. The meetings give the broadband office a grassroots understanding of the current connectivity landscape throughout Kansas to develop an effective 5-year strategic plan and support statewide digital equity. So if you've got time on Monday evening from 6:30 to 8, they'll be at the Garden City Community College to get some input on broadband access. Also, as Commissioner Unruh stated, that citywide cleanup will be held April 3rd through the 14th. The clean community contribute to a city's overall image, affecting tourism, economic development, and our local culture overall. It's the pride of the community. You know, if you travel through other communities, you kind of look and see, and, you know, this is a great opportunity to spruce up and clean up your area. It really just makes us proud to be in our community, and everybody should be proud to be in Garden City. And that's all I've got.
Commissioner Ortiz.
All right. Ditto on the rest of the commissioners. I don't want to repeat, but I look forward to going out to the golf course too with their kind of remodels that they've been going on with the golf courses and the changes and stuff throughout the wintertime. But looking forward to that. Also with the zoo, with nice weather coming, it was pretty packed over the spring break. So yeah, it's just like Commissioner Sessions said, with the pride of the community being clean. You don't notice a bunch of trash with all the wind going on and craziness of that blowing trash around. You don't see a lot. So thanks, and for those who've just been kind of keeping things neat and thrown away. So, but yeah, with the parks and stuff, you don't see. So thanks, Aaron, to your staff on keeping things cleaned in the parks and at the zoo and at the golf course. So with that, that's streets too. I was going to mention Jenny Barker. I haven't gone that way, but they did say it was starting yesterday. But I've been avoiding that because I knew it was going to start yesterday. So I don't know if they started, but yeah, just be aware of that. Also, just like to give thanks to the people who've applied for the funds from AFLAC. If you need insurance, call AFLAC. It's not a plug, but the AFAC funds. I mean, what a great opportunity to just give back to the community in those outreach programs to support those ones in need. So I know I've visited the one at Turning Point, and listening to some of those people, they were really grateful that they had a place to go. Even over, they don't get to take breaks. They don't get to take spring break off. So having that available for them at your church, Pastor Nathan, was a great opportunity for them. And hearing that, it was kind of like, wow, that's kind of an eye-opener that they need somewhere to go and they have that place to go. So, but yeah, just great opportunity for that fund to give back. Food truck, also every Friday now. They started last Friday, but it was a little chilly. I didn't go to that one. But yeah, it's every Friday now throughout the summer and stuff. So other than that, I wore purple for Aaron, Stuart, and Jamie. So I know they're big fans. So let's go Big 12, right? That's all I got.
Well, I don't have much left. My list, I just keep checking it off. But I think it was last week, my weeks sort of run together. I had an opportunity to present the awards at the Youth Entrepreneur Challenge, and that was just a remarkable event. It was an opportunity for students to present their business plans, and some students had actual products that they had fabricated and are ready to start selling, and others needed a little bit of help, but that's okay, because that's really what that's about. I mean, it's about, kind of just sparking that interest in thinking about being an entrepreneur and what would that look like, and such a variety of ideas, and it was just an amazing experience. And for the first place prize, I mean, $1,000, I mean, it was just phenomenal. I think it was $1,000, $750, $500, and then Western State Bank did a People's Choice, and they received $250. And I just want to thank everybody who had a hand in that. I know Downtown Vision, I believe Economic Development, the school district, but there were just a lot of different entities that helped with that, and the judges, and I mean, it does take quite a few people to be able to put that on. But then, to have the public come in and have an opportunity to visit with the students and give them some insight and some pointers, I mean, it was just really, really valuable. So, and then also, I just wanted to thank Donna and all the others who volunteer for the Public Safety Advisory Board, really for any of the boards. I mean, we have a lot of advisory boards at the city, and I think anytime we have enough applicants to fill and even have enough so that we have to make decisions about which of the 4 out of 6 people, to put on there, I think it's important. So thank you for all that you do. So with that, we'll go into executive session. And on the first executive session, how long?
Hey, Mayor, and I think even though we're only going to vote on them one at a time, we'll go in on the first motion, come out, do that. Just for the sake of transparency to the public, I think reading both of the purposes for our executive session, letting the public know we have 2 of them, and then you're freed up to kind of bounce in and out of the meeting to wrap it up. But, yeah, the first one is probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think we could do it.
And who needs to be in?
Oh, I think just Jennifer and I in that one.
Okay. And do we need to take a break? We can probably go in like at 2, I mean, people are leaving now, but probably starting at, what, 2:35? That gives you a couple minutes, so, okay.
2 minutes.
I know, quickly exit. No. Okay, 2:37. Well, 2:38, that gives you 5 minutes. So I'm doing math in my head in front of people. So, all right.
So to be clear, we're going to go into this executive session, then come out, and then do the motion to go into the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in order to protect a matter protected by the attorney-client privilege pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2, I move that the governing body recess into executive session for consultation with our legal counsel, Jennifer Cunningham, city attorney, to seek legal advice regarding policies related to personnel. This is with city commissioners Jennifer Cunningham, Matt Allen, to start at 2:38, which is in 5 minutes, and to last for 10 minutes to 2:48.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
And just for disclosure, the purpose, the exemption's the same one on the second one, but the purpose is going to be different. And if you just identify for the public's benefit, the purpose of the second one. That's not on this motion, but just so folks know why we went into executive session.
For protecting attorney-client privilege pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2, to consult with our legal counsel to consider litigation.
Correct. Okay.
Okay. All right, 2:38.
2:38, yes.
We'll go in.
Who do you want in the second?